Nancy said, I've known Nancy since we were all little guys. Our fathers worked together, and they told us to get out of trucking, and neither of us listened, and so here we are today. But I've been working in the trucking industry since the late 90s, or as I heard the other day, some kid call it the late 1900s, which was incredibly insulting. But yeah, so I've been in it. I started fixing trucks, washing trucks, and then all the way up to getting inside the office, and now I do safety and compliance work. And I absolutely love listening to troopers out there on the road because I don't have that experience. He does, and so he sees a lot of stuff that I try to preach as well. So anytime I get to see an actual trooper talk about what he's seeing out there, it's absolutely fascinating. But just a little about me, I've worked for some very large carriers, as well as startup trucking companies. So I have seen almost everything that you could probably see on there. And now, as of right now, I focus on safety and compliance and more what you can do on your end in the office on how to improve safety and compliance. So again, there's going to be some repeat slides, so I'm going to go through them quickly because Tom touched on a bunch of them. But as a millennial, an older millennial, my question always is why? Okay, why do we have to do it? Why are the rules and regulations there? Why should I follow them? And so in order to really improve your CSA scores, I always like to understand why and where they came from. So a quick breakdown of how the CSA really works. It all falls under the DOT, Department of Transportation, who then sets up the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, who is kind of shining or kind of hovering over the trucking industry. Now, the FMCSA is not very big though, and that is kind of a problem. They are severely understaffed, and they fall right below, as far as budget-wise, right underneath the Maritime Administration. So they're right kind of in the middle there, severely understaffed. They probably should get some more, but that's for a different talk. But then the FMCSA said, hey, we need to put a system in place to monitor to make sure that the trucking companies are doing what they're supposed to do. And that's where the CSA comes into play. The CSA then implements the SMS system, the safety measurement system. And again, Tom talked about a bunch of this stuff. All this data that the SMS gets comes from roadside inspections and crashes. Now, he is not a hours of service or compliance guy. I am. Okay, that's my wheelhouse right there. And it's kind of funny because we were talking beforehand because he's a big hazmat guy, and that's the one area that I'm not. So I always love talking to those guys because hazmat is a completely original animal, and it is quite interesting. But the hours of service, he kind of mentioned that he's not a big fan of them. I love them, okay, because they have made trucking, I think, easier for office professionals to monitor what's going on out there. They made it easier so we could see if the driver is in violation, and it has also helped office staff, dispatchers mainly, not abuse the drivers that are out there, okay? It used to be like, how many hours you got? Oh, you got this many? Okay, great. Now we can see how many hours they got so we aren't putting them in a dangerous situation. And I'm going to cover a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But the SMS then prioritizes, the FMCSA uses this to see if they need to use enforcement resources or an audit, as we all like to call it, which nobody really wants, but they're not that scary. Now, I believe you were kind of talking about some new categories and some new things that are popping up here. To kind of answer your question a little bit, they have come out with some new ideas that they're going to enforce. And yeah, you were right about that. They're going to get rid of the basics. They're going to go to a different title, but they haven't told us when yet. So like any good government agency, they've got grand plans, but there's nothing that they haven't decided to do anything yet. But this is some of their ideas that they're looking to do. The controlled substance and alcohol, they're going to get rid of that. That's the proposal. They're just going to get rid of that and move all that into unsafe driving because in reality, it is unsafe driving. So that makes good sense. Also, one thing that I'm not going to touch on too much, but it has become a major issue that I have seen, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it too, is the legal use of marijuana. Okay, that if you've been around the alcohol stuff, like you said, that takes a while to get out of your system. Edibles, CBD, all that kind of stuff takes weeks to get out of a system. So make sure that if you do have contact with drivers who like to partake, whenever, preferably not behind the wheel, but like if they're on home time, make sure that they understand that that stuff will take weeks and they don't know when a random test is coming. Okay, so but that's another big one that I'm starting to see creep up a lot in the safety world. But they're also, the big thing too is they're going to split the vehicle maintenance category. So they're going to make it vehicle maintenance and vehicle maintenance driver observed. And there's a whole list of kind of the things that they're going into. But basically what this is, and usually I only got a couple minutes, so I'm really only kind of skimming the surface on a lot of this. But basically what it is, the driver observed is stuff that the driver should see in a pre-trip. A bald tire is a perfect example of that. That should be a driver observed vehicle maintenance. A regular vehicle maintenance is going to be brake issues, airline issues, stuff that maybe a mechanic would find, but not a driver on a walk-around inspection. That's kind of the broad two differences with that. So they're going to make that category into two and move the controlled substance over. So that's one of the differences. The other big thing is right now, this is how severity and the time wait. So if you get pulled over for an inspection, let's say at the top one here, you're going 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. That carries a severity weight of 10. It goes from 1 to 10. So that's as severe as you can possibly get. If it's brand new, it goes with a time weight of 3. The time weights go from 1 being the oldest to 3 being the newest. So if you got pulled over today, got a violation for being 15 over, you have a severity weight of 10 times 3 because it's new, it's 30, okay? That's a 30-point stop. That is bad, okay? Plus on top of that, like he said, and I preach this to every driver that I talk to, don't speed. A, because it's dangerous. You have a really big vehicle that takes you a long time to stop. And B, like Trooper Tom pointed out, if he gets you for speeding, what else can he find? That's what they do. So I tell the drivers, don't open your doors for DOT to come and take a look. Speeding is the easiest one to get pulled over for, and all of a sudden now they're going to do an inspection. But the less than, if it's a less severe, like following too close, it's a 5 on the severity weight, times a 10, or times 3, so now you got 15. But the longer those stay on your CSA, the less it goes down. Now, they are proposing a new change to this as well. Again, they don't know when they're going to roll it out, but it's going to be just a 1 and a 2 for severity weight. Basically, 2 is if you get put out of service, it's a severity weight of 2. If you don't get put out of service, it's a severity weight of 1. Again, I don't know when they're rolling this out, but that is the proposed change that they are making to this. Okay. So how to lower your score. Tom talked on a couple of these things, but there's a couple things that we can do also on the inside of the company as well. The biggest thing though, there is no magic bullet to lowering your score. It is just like a credit score. That's how I explain it to everybody. Because believe it or not, as a safety guy, as safety professionals, this is usually the biggest question that we get asked is, how do I lower the score? It takes time. That is the biggest thing. It takes time and it takes close monitoring. There we go. Okay, so what should I monitor? The biggest one, utilize technology. That was always my biggest complaint in the trucking industry, is that we just don't have technology. I'm now eating my words. We have a ton of technology now at our fingertips in this transportation space. We have electronic logs, dash cams, vehicle tracking. Those 3 should just be completely automatic. And I'm talking, when I say dash cams, I'm talking outward-facing dash cams. We can get into a great debate if you want about driver-facing dash cams, because I can make cases for it, cases against it. We could talk about that later. But at a minimum, you have to have an outward-facing dash cam. They'll pay for themselves in the first wreck you get into. But the thing that you have to be careful with when it comes to technology, because we have so much of it, if you're not monitoring the technology that you put in place, it could actually be used against you should something turn and go to the court of law. So if you are going to utilize technology, like the biggest one that I was just talking to a guy the other day about is in-cab audio. Should you record in-cab audio? Should you record what the drivers are saying? Yes, if you can monitor it. If you can consistently monitor it, by all means, you do it. If you can't monitor it consistently, don't do it, okay?
What do you mean by monitor
if you're listening to it, like if you have someone whose job it is to basically audit that and listen to it, if there's a crash that happens, do you have records of it before that happened? Like, is this driver known for like road rage? That's the biggest thing. Are you having someone, if he's cursing out every car on the road for the last 3 weeks, and then no pointing, okay? No pointing. This is that's what I brought. I'm going to leave that between you two, okay? But yeah, that's kind of a big thing. And that goes same with electronic logs, and we're going to get into this in just one second. All this stuff has to be monitored. If you're going to implement technology, make sure that you have somebody monitoring it. And that, going down into a tangent here, I was talking to Nancy earlier too about this. The safety departments in trucking companies is often usually the one that's completely overlooked, when in reality, there should be a lot of people in a safety department, because there's a lot of technology out here now that we need to keep an eye on, and it's all very important. And again, okay, so that's all I'm going to say about that, because I could go on a little bit more. All right, so pre-trip inspections, great. Are they doing them? Do you have somebody in your office that's looking at it? Every pre-trip inspection should be done electronically now. Usually the electronic login devices will have a pre-trip or a DVIR, driver vehicle inspection report feature in there. Make sure that they're doing it, because as you can see, lights and tires, easy to monitor, easy to check. They make up almost 40% of the violations that are caught on the road. And tire violations are all over 8 on the severity level right now. If you have a bad tire, it's going to be at an 8, and most likely you're going to be put out of service. If there's an audible leak, if it's bald, you're going to be put out of service. Anytime there's a danger to anybody else on the road, you're going to be put out of service. So these are the easiest ones to look at, and they make up almost half of them. So make sure your drivers are doing pre-trip inspection, and make sure that you in the office are monitoring that as well. Yes, it takes a little time, but it'll pay for itself. Electronic logs, ELDs. Everyone should have ELDs unless you're running local or you're farm exempt or whatever. But make sure that you're looking at them. Make sure that the drivers are doing the correct hours. Make sure that they're not falsifying any of their logs, which I know this is shocking. Glad you're all sitting down, but drivers like to exaggerate and falsify some logs sometimes. Make sure that you're looking at it. The biggest ones I always catch are incorrect PC use. And maybe no one's explained it to them, but the rules state, and I don't want to get into a PC debate right now, okay? But the rules state that you have to find a safe place to park before you run out of hours. A lot of drivers will say, oh, I've run out of my 11 hours, now I'm going to throw it in PC and get to a safe spot. That is not how that works. And if the driver is caught doing that, you're going to get a falsification of logs for that. The other big thing too is exemptions. There seems to be a lot of exemptions, especially in like the tanker world, because if they're in the cold days, am I right, Nancy? On the cold times, they need like the petroleum and they need the propane and stuff like that. So there's a lot of exemptions, but they'll turn on and they'll turn off pretty quickly. And there's states that will only do them and certain states won't. And how do you know which one? So make sure that if you are running a commodity that a driver could be on exemption for, that they're doing it correctly. And the only way to do that is to check and monitor the electronic logs, because they should be noting in their e-logs, hey, I'm running on exemption, and there should be a note section that says that. So, but again, it means that we have to monitor it. Okay, driver qualification files. Is the driver that is in your truck, should he be in your truck? That's a big thing too. Make sure that the med cards and the licenses are up to date, okay? There is software out there now that will tell you if it's out of date. All you gotta do is plug it in and they'll monitor it for you. I always tell drivers, you have to know 2 dates. You have to know when your CDL expires and when your med card expires. Do you know how many drivers actually remember those 2 dates? Very few, okay? So I always make sure that I have the software and make sure that you have that, because and then utilize, okay, I'm gonna come back, I'm getting ahead of myself. As a safety guy, my whole thing is I always imagine I'm standing in a court of law, because quite frankly, you might have to someday. I want to make sure that any driver I put in a truck should be in that truck, and that I know he should be in that truck. If a driver were to get into an accident, and we have absolutely no clue when that is, because I've never had a driver call me up and say, today I feel like crashing. So you never know when that's going to happen. but they're going to get into a crash and it's going to be super inconvenient. But I want to know that that driver, even though he got into a crash, he's still medically cleared to drive that truck, and he's still by the state or by the Fed allowed to drive that truck. If he got into a crash and I didn't know that, and he has an expired med card or an expired CDL on file with us, who do you think is going to be in really big trouble then? It's going to be the driver, and it's going to be you. So always make sure that your driver qualification files are up to speed, because if they're not, I hate scare tactics, but truly, you guys could be in big trouble about that. The last one here, utilize continuous monitoring software. I highly recommend that, okay? It's not a necessary thing, but it's cheap, and it'll save you a lot of grief, because drivers will sometimes have issues where they will lose their CDLs or they'll get downgraded. You know, CDL Class A, they'll get downgraded to a B, and they will have no clue that happened to them. And before you know it, they're in Yankton, South Dakota at a scale house, and they don't have a proper CDL, and now you have to figure out how to get them home and how to get that freight picked up. Ask me how I know about that exact incident, because I had a driver get pulled over in Yankton, South Dakota. You know where Yankton, South Dakota is? Nowhere. So it was incredibly difficult to get that. But what had happened, he fell behind on some child support payments. They downgraded his CDL, and all of a sudden he doesn't have a license to drive that truck. If we had continuous monitoring software of their CDLs, which is usually like $2 to $5 a driver a month, I would have known that right away. To say, hey, you don't have a CDL anymore. Figure this out before you move the truck. Again, it's not necessary, but it is incredibly valuable. It does also, people say, I have yet to hear like an authority figure, maybe I'm not looking at the right spots, but it says, you know, every year you have to run a new MVR for a driver. People will say that takes the place of that. I don't. I still run an MVR, okay? Just do it. It doesn't hurt anything. It's not much. Oh, yes.
Before you go on, the question is, do you know where you can view the assigned violation points, or excuse me, do you know where you can view the assigned violation points to each write-up? The SMS methodology, can't find it online anywhere.
Yeah, so it's on the SMS website, so they're close. You have to log in to the FMCSA portal, and then from the portal you can go into the SMS website and find where that is. I wish I could help you more on the FMS, the portal, but that is an absolute train wreck in my opinion. If you've used the portal, you know what I'm talking about. But it is on the, I forget the exact web address, but if you type in SMS, like FMCSA SMS report, you can get to that. But if you log in, then it'll show you like the drivers and all the details with it. If you don't log in, it'll still show you the violations, and like what state they happened in and what happened, but it won't give you the details. So you have to log into the SMS, which you have to do through the portal. And you need a login.gov login to do that. So I probably just confused them a lot more, but if they Google that, they can get to it. But yes, you can get it on the SMS website.
We can give out your contact information.
As luck would have it, I got business cards. Yep. Okay, real quick here. Now, again, even going back now before driver qualification files, should the driver even be driving for you? That's a big process too. Don't rush your hiring or your orientation processes, okay? Every year, it comes out acute versus critical violations, you know, the top 10 violations in each of them. And one, I think it was like number 4 this year, was putting a driver in a truck before they had their pre-employment drug test back. Like, I can't tell you how dangerous that is. You have absolutely no clue what this person is doing, and you put them in one of your trucks and put them on one of your customer loads. And don't forget about the PSP. I always preach that one, the pre-employment screening program. This will give you a much more thorough driving history of the driver. It'll tell you the violations that they've received and all that. And the reason I love that is because if you get that back and there's, you know, vehicle maintenance issues on there, well, what are they? You know, sometimes it is actually the company they were with was a bad company, and they were getting smoked on some of that. But if you got a lot of like unsafe driving violations on there, might be a bad driver, okay? And the last one there, trust your gut, okay? I can't tell you how many times we have brought on a driver and go, I think it'll work, and then it gets on like, oh, no. Because if you know, I mean, do you know how much on average does it cost to replace a driver in a trucking company? Does anyone know this? What's that?
3 to 5.
3 to 5. I've even heard up to 8 to 12.
Depending on
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the truck payments don't stop. The insurance payments don't stop. The recruiting costs don't stop. I mean, it's expensive to replace drivers. So make sure that when you do have a driver, trust your gut and make sure it's the right one in there. Yes, sir.
Sam, when do you recommend that all of that stuff should be done?
I recommend before you even put the driver, before you even bring him in.
The FMCSA says you
I
have
know.
up to 30 days.
I know. Ask me what my opinion is of the FMCSA and all their stuff. Yes, you're right. Like, you don't have to run an MVR till like 30 days after. Like, that's complete whatever. No, because like you said, if you're flying them in or you're driving, whatever, like you already got $2,000 worth of travel costs and hotels and meals and all that stuff, and you don't even know if he's the right person or they are the right person to be in the truck. So I recommend all this stuff before you even bring him in. You could talk to him through the whole process saying, hey, it's going to be a 1 to 2 week process at a minimum to bring you over. So, a lot of guys are like, I just quit my job, I'm ready to start. I'm like, well, file unemployment for a couple of days because we're gonna do our due diligence on our end. So yes, I do recommend doing that before you bring them in and before you seat them in your truck. That's your truck. That's your equipment. Don't put a guy who shouldn't be in there. The best way to lower your CSA scores is to pass inspections then. Like, that's really how it is. Like Tom said, pass your inspections, get those good inspections on your CSA data. That will help lower it down because you really want good CSA scores. I mean, it's one of those things that not a lot of people talk about. Everyone has a question how you do it. I just showed you how to do it. Okay, but it's really important to keep your CSA scores down because of the main things. You have a safe company, you have safe drivers, your insurance rates should be cheaper if you have good CSA scores, because all of this is public information. And it's not just you guys looking at it, it's your insurance companies, it's your customers, it's shippers, it's all those people are looking at that safety data and making a judgment on your company of whether or not they want to do business with you. So, but you want to make sure you have a safe company. I was just talking to an insurance guy last week, and he told me a stat that was incredible. In 2015, 20% of all vehicle and semi crashes ended in litigation, ended in lawyers. Like, the lawyers got involved. 20%. In 2023, I think it was, 82% of commercial vehicles and cars ended in some sort of litigation. Okay, we've all heard nuclear verdicts out there. We don't want any part of it. So keeping your CSA scores, make sure that the people who are in your vehicles should be in your vehicles, is the easiest way to avoid all that pain and misery that can come with having drivers on your fleet. So this is what I do. I'm an independent safety consultant. I do mock reviews. I do data queues for people. I look at driver qualification files all day. If you have any need for something like that, please let me know. That's my information, or I have business cards. I'd love to talk to you afterwards about any questions you might have. But that is all I got. Any questions?
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.